a reincarnated baby man who went through hell after transforming into a gorilla, I probably know more about magic!
Hello, and welcome to the Kongversation. I'm Hyle Russell.
And I'm Cameron Reigle.
How was your Thanksgiving, Cameron?
It was a Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Speaking of hell, today we're going to be talking about Demon Turf. Low-hanging jokes there. I grab them. This is going to be an episode where we finally get into some of what's been going on in Playtonic's world. We haven't actually talked about Playtonic as a dedicated topic for a while. We did Yooka Laylee and the Cracklestone, a couple episodes on that, but a lot's been happening with Playtonic this year for a studio that hasn't announced a new game in 2 years. A lot has been going on. So we're going to be touching upon all of that, but mostly focusing on Demon Turf, which is the latest published game from the Playtonic Friends label. And we'll touch upon that if you don't know what that is. If you're not in the loop, you will get in the loop. Really quick, though, I just want to say, support DK Vinyl Patreon. Check us out, dkvine.com/Patreon. Your patronage helps make the conversation possible. And don't forget, you can follow us on social media. Follow us on Twitter right now, because every week through the end of the year, we are having big prize giveaways. And when I say big prizes, Cameron, I don't mean a car. I don't even mean a new like Xbox Series X. I mean like the Rare Racers pins from Fangamer, giving stuff like that away. Every Monday, you can check out a new giveaway. We announce the winner on Wednesday. All you have to do is follow us and retweet that particular tweet. But got lots of prizes I've been hoarding, and I'm eager to get them out, so I have room in my desk drawer. So that's twitter.com/DKVine or dkvine.com/Twitter. So yeah, that's what's going on. I'm going to be mailing out lots of stuff this holiday season. Playtonic. Let's get into it. So Playtonic Friends. We've touched upon this just kind of an ancillary discussion here on the Kongversation, but we haven't really gone in depth with what's been happening. So earlier this year, Gavin Price, the founder and head of Playtonic, announced that they were starting their own publishing label, Playtonic Friends, where they are essentially publishing other indie titles. And it's remarkable that this indie studio is now publishing games. Clearly, Gavin has like a master plan. Part of that is, we're going to be making our games, but also we want to expand our net and pull up some other smaller indie studios or indie developers and kind of give them a spotlight with the Playtonic brand. Yeah, so I mean, this was a big announcement earlier this year, of course, and we've already had 3 Playtonic Friends titles released across the various platforms. And Gavin's ambitious plans also include expanding Playtonic. And we heard a little bit about this a couple weeks ago. We didn't have any sort of clarification. Gavin, I mentioned it during an interview that his plan was to kind of get 3 separate teams up and running at Playtonic, sort of, I guess, triple the size of the studio almost, and have it be similar to the old barn structure at Rare. I mean, they still have barns at Rare, but, it's not like it used to be where they would have these smaller teams doing games. So you'd have the Banjo team, the Conquer team, stuff like that.
I recall a big important difference that Gavin called attention to is these teams kind of won't be kept in the dark about what each other are doing, or will be kept in the dark less, rather.
I don't think there's going to be the same elements of social Darwinism that the Stamper brothers seem to promote, where, granted, I mean, it worked well for Rare for a while, where you had the Conquer team influencing the Dream team, who became the Banjo team, I was like, oh, Conker is kicking our ass. We need to come up with this plan. Oh, now it's Banjo-Kazooie, and now we're kicking Conker's ass. Now Conker has to go back to the drawing board, and, it takes 4 years for a game to come out then. But, I mean, this was exciting when we heard about it, because it was like, well, one, I was like, how are you going to do this? Because, Playtonic, they're an indie studio, and granted, they're a bigger indie studio that had some, investors early on, and of course, one of the most lucrative Kickstarter campaigns in, I think, like, European gaming. They broke records with that Yooka Laylee Kickstarter back in 2015. They were flush with cash, but, it's been several years, and they also had to weather a pandemic, which the lockdown hit the UK harder than it did here in the US. So, just because we didn't lock down in a lot of places. How are they going to do this? And we found out last week or so exactly how they were going to do this. And it's a bit controversial, we'll say.
Yeah, Hyle, where'd this elephant come from? I don't understand. What?
I'm trying to tiptoe around it. Basically, the Chinese tech company Tencent, who a lot of our listeners are probably familiar with, and if they weren't, they're probably familiar with now. Somewhat contentious tech company who kind of have their fingers in several pies around the world. And they have become minority shareholders in Playtonic. And they don't own Playtonic. Let's just clarify that. They've bought a stake in Playtonic, but they don't outright own it. Playtonic still has control. It's similar to, I think, how Nintendo used to have a big stake in Rare, but they didn't outright own Rare. The important difference when Rare asked to be bought by Nintendo and Nintendo said nah. That's why, Nintendo and Rare parted ways. But Tencent has basically decided to invest in Playtonic, and this will give Playtonic the capital and resources it needs to rapidly expand, bring in several new team members, and even get a new upgraded HQ. So, I'm not going to sit here and try to say I was overly ecstatic when I heard this. I think everyone was sort of like, oh, Tencent. Oh. But I will say that out of all of the potential bad scenarios, this is probably the least bad. I know how the world works. I know where most of the money is coming from in the industry these days, like as far as investors go. And it's companies like Tencent. So it seems like Playtonic is optimistic about this. I don't think Gavin would have signed this. I don't have any personal insight into the mechanics behind this deal. I read the gamesindustry.biz article, like everyone else, and that's all I know. But, it sounds like this isn't like Gavin Price's golden parachute. It's not like he's looking to cash out. He wants to build Playtonic. This is a bit different than I think when the Stampers went with Microsoft, where the Stampers had like one eye towards retirement in a decade, and they wanted Rare in a solid position where they could like step away after a while. I think Gavin wants to aggressively grow Playtonic, and it sounds like he's pretty optimistic. It sounds like Tencent so far has been pretty hands off. They said in the press release they have full creative control over their IPs. So, I mean, knock on wood. If it is the best bad case scenario, at the end of the day, I'm not going to turn up my nose if we get lots more Playtonic games. And Gavin says the plan is for one Playtonic game per year, one internally developed Playtonic game per year. So, I admit I'm excited about that possibility.
Yeah, I feel underqualified to speak about this in any way, but I don't think that assurances that this deal isn't going to affect like their creative output in any way necessarily means that you have to be okay with this happening.
Oh, absolutely not.
But it's one of those things like I can I can accept it. It's not something that's going to make me say like, well, okay, I'm like returning all my Playtonic games. I'm not buying anything you make. But it's not something you have to like either. It is an unfortunate thing that happens all the time. I have definitely bought games from studios that are a lot deeper into 10 cents pockets than Playtonic.
Yeah, like I'm not going to sit here and tell our listeners how they should think about this. And it's perfectly okay to be conflicted about this. I'm conflicted about it. I want the best for everyone at Playtonic. I love the studio. I love everyone there. It sounds like they're optimistic about it. Somebody asked me on Twitter right when the deal was announced, what do I think? And, I was reserved, but I said, it sounds like Playtonic has full creative control. It sounds like they're optimistic about it. And if it gives us more games, that's a good thing. And a lot of people from Playtonic saw it and liked it. So I think that's the general feeling by and large, internally there. So time will tell. We never know how these things are going to shake out. For example, like after the Microsoft buyout of Rare, we had ups and downs and ups and downs and downs and downs and downs before we had ups, ups, ups. It was a long, winding roller coaster there. We never know what tomorrow will bring, but
I feel like Playtonic's staff are historically pretty open about their business dealings and speaking their mind when it comes to it. So I do think if this were I'm going to get up out of my chair and walk out, this isn't good sort of scenario, we'd see it, but... Yeah,
and again, it is what it is. It's a reality of the industry in 2021.
Is it kind of like a sad state of things? Like, part of me is just like, oh, I'm just relieved they didn't say they were making NFTs.
Yes. I think we're all at that point.
No, Playtonic,
right
I'm not going to walk over 10 cent. I might walk if you do the NFT thing. Please, for the love of God, don't do the NFT thing.
I don't need to get into arguments about whether or not an NFT is DKU. That's I think that would be the point where I would just die on the inside.
I don't need an uglier monkey to have to pay attention to than City Kong.
With that GamesIndustry.biz interview with Gavin, GamesIndustry.biz also said that they were at work on a follow-up to Yooka Laylee. What the fans and what people at Playtonic even have referred to as Tooka-Laylee, as a play on Banjo-Tooie. And it's interesting because it's mentioned in the GamesIndustry.biz article, and GamesIndustry.biz, they're not a clickbait site. They're a very buttoned up resource for people in the industry. But nowhere in the actual interview with Gavin does he mention that they are hard at work on a new Yooka Laylee sequel. I mean, you could maybe infer it from a lot of the stuff he says, but none of the actual quotes does he outright say that. And I thought it weird because, like, over the weekend, some gaming sites started running with the story. We didn't, because I wasn't quite clear if it was confirmed or not. And then it, eventually got up to Nintendo Life, and then Playtonic retweeted it, I think Monday morning, and then they unretweeted it later that day. So
yeah, I haven't really known how to read what's going on with that, because I had just always kind of assumed, like, no insider knowledge here, but I just always kind of assumed, like, Playtonic working on a follow-up to Yooka Laylee was like a given, or like a worst kept secret, because there was like casual discussion of like things to do in a sequel to Yooka Laylee as early as the developer commentaries they recorded on YouTube.
Yeah. You can usually read the tea leaves with Playtonic. Gavin himself, every time he gives an interview, he'll drop a clue. and sometimes there's only a clue in retrospect, but I mean, if they are working on 3 games right now, if that's the plan, I think one of them would have to be a straight up follow up to Yooka Laylee. Now Gavin did say in the interview that they're not going to be doing the Rare route of the late 90s and have like 3 separate 3D platformers in development concurrently. Like they will do one 3D platformer and then another genre and then another genre. So we're not going to get like the 3 shades of 3D platformers where it's like, and one of them is the Donkey Kong 64 of the bunch where it doesn't really have anything new to say.
3 teams revising their visions over and over again because they realize that their game looks like they cribbed the other's homework, even though they didn't.
Yeah, the social Darwinism that I mentioned, that worked for Rare really well during the Nintendo era, but that didn't really work so well in the years after. And then, they rethought their approach, and now things are peachy. But I am excited because I think Yooka Laylee is actually a game that's grown on me quite a bit, even in the years since. Like, I go back to it. I've been playing it very, very slowly on Twitch. And, I'm just like, wow, I really like this game. This is a crunchy 3D platformer, as our friend Josh Wallen would say. But Impossible Lair was such a stellar, like 5-star perfect title that I'm just so jazzed now to see like what they can do now that they don't have the pressures of being a startup and having to like follow through with all these Kickstarter promises. Like they could just make the 3D platformer they want to make with like no expectation.
Yeah, I like the first Yooka Laylee. I do have issues with it, but the number of issues that I think couldn't be ironed out by a sequel with the benefit of hindsight is 0.
Yeah, like this is moving aside our thoughts on Tencent as an overall entity and their past deeds and actions. You can look on the Wikipedia for that. There's a whole section under controversies. But I linked to it in our news article on DKM. I was like, here, like I don't need to paraphrase any of this. I'll just link you to it. But looking aside beyond all of that, this is an exciting time if we get a new Playtonic game per year. I mean, that's the plan. Obviously, things go astray, like global pandemics. New variant in South Africa. Are you ready? But, aside from that, like this is an amazing time to be a fan of Playtonic or the DKU when like we're getting this structure that we've always wanted back. Like, oh, if only there could be a way that games could be made like they were in the late 90s. And, indie development, that's where it's at. Like that's the only outlet really where you can make games, at that speed. And, if Playtonic can get this going, if the plan comes to fruition, ooh boy, that's going to be some good times ahead. That being said, Playtonic Friends also exist. And Playtonic's Friends slate this year, they've published 3 games. They've got 3 games that they've announced that are scheduled for next year. So Wave 1 that came out this year, BPM, Bullets Per Minute, which is kind of like this rhythm shooting game. I've not actually played it yet. I fully intend to purchase all of these games, by the way, and try them out. I'm more intrigued by A Little Golf Journey, a zen, relaxing golf game. Like that's the whole like pitch behind it. No pun intended. But admittedly, this was also announced right alongside Mario Golf Super Rush. So it kind of got drowned out in our community. But now that we know Diddy Kong isn't seemingly coming to Mario Golf Super Rush because they announced the last free game update, and it was Wiggler and Shy Guy?
Yeah, Wiggler and Shy Guy.
Yeah, it's like, come on, like, Camelot, I vouched for you. I said you love Donkey Kong. Of course you would put Diddy in the game. And then what? I don't understand. This is a tangent. Real quick tangent, Cameron. I do not understand what's happening with these multiplayer Mario games and Diddy Kong. Because it seems like Diddy gets into, like, Mario Party Superstars. Or no, excuse me, Super Mario Party. Diddy gets into Super Mario Party, and then you're like, oh, Diddy's in it. and then Diddy stopped showing up in them.
Does genuinely feel like there's a coin flip every single time.
I said when they announced this earlier, I wish I could sit here and say, well, I have insider information that this is all from the Donkey Kong team's directives to not put Diddy in any of these games. I don't know any such thing. Honestly, it's just as inconsistent as it's always been.
Yeah, it's hard to even think that's the case because it's not even like it's not the binary. Oh, this only applies to Diddy. There are Mario characters that are plagued by this same phenomenon.
Yeah, it's frustrating as a fan of Diddy. Like, Diddy is my favorite character, and it's just like, oh, if Diddy was in this, it would kick up my enjoyment immeasurably. But then he's not, and they put in Wiggler.
Yeah, it's the problem that things like Smash Brothers doing Everyone Is Here solve for me. Is if this was a game series that had never had Diddy in it, I probably wouldn't feel all that strongly about him not being present. Mm-hmm. But it's like you gave and then you took away, so at that point I do get a little disappointed.
Yeah, I mean, on like, how much would I have enjoyed Mario Party Superstars, which I enjoyed, but if I could play as Diddy, I mean, that I know it's shallow because it's just basically a skin, but all the same, like, I play these games for the Kongs, and anyway, so yeah, now I'm more interested in a little golf journey, and then of course there was Demon Turf, and Demon Turf was the first one they announced, but the last one released. And Demon Turf is also the DKU one. So we didn't know how this was going to work, right? When Playtonic Friends was announced, because I made a joke on Twitter and I was like, hey, basically saying, hey, it would be great if you could put your, Yooka Laylee characters in all of these so they could all be part of the shared universe. And
3-tapping goldfish in every garage.
and they followed through with Demon Turf. I think they did it in a smart way. Now, having not played BPM or Little Golf Journey, there may be references or cameos in there that I haven't seen, but I haven't seen any chatter elsewhere about them. And they were pretty upfront about Demon Turf. Like, hey, Yooka Laylee are in Demon Turf. They make a cameo.
Yeah, there's a dedicated trailer highlighting the cameos, not only Yooka Laylee, but other characters from other games or media making the game.
Yeah. So I think, and again, this is just a hunch. This is just educated guess, but I think they're going to add in Playtonic characters only when it feels tonally appropriate. Not only for Playtonic, but more importantly for the integrity of the game itself. BPM wouldn't have really made much sense if like Vendy shows up. that would have kind of like steamrolled the tone of that game. I
have to imagine it's like at least to a significant degree up to the discretion of the development studio. Like, these toys are in the box if you want to play with them, but we're not going to compromise your creative vision.
Which I feel like is the way to go. Now, if I was the dictator in charge, it would all be part of the Playtonic, DKU universe, however you want to define it. But I think Demon Turf was the right choice for the initial wave of 3 titles. And that brings us to wave 2, which I want to address really quick. We don't know if any of these are DKU yet, but we've got Little Gator Game, which I adore this game already, Cameron. This looks like such a cute, just charming little... I don't even know how to describe it. It's a cel-shaded island adventure, but it's very like juvenile in the best way.
Every bit of footage I've seen just like gives me the warm and fuzzies. It's very, very adorable.
Yeah, as I get older, I get less cynical about this sort of stuff, and I just go out loud, and I have no shame about it. And Little Gator Game, it's just it looks like it would be right at home in the DKU, quite honestly, but like a less abrasive side of the DKU. And I would love if someone like Rextro or somebody showed up in this game, because Rextro is probably the most wholesome ukulele character, and I don't want this world, this island's soiled by any of the more lavacious ukulele characters.
It seems like a game maybe Rextro would fit in.
Yeah.
Just because he seems the most sincere of any ukulele character.
Let's keep Trouser far away from it, but yes. But yeah, I'm really excited about Little Gator Game, honestly. But there's also Blossom Tales 2, The Minotaur Prince, which is actually a sequel to, of course, Blossom Tales, and which is a kind of an RPG in the style of the SNES RPGs of the day, or even like adventure games. Looks interesting, looks cool. And then there's also Victory Heat Rally, which you were actually interested in this title before it was announced that Playtonic Friends was publishing it.
Yeah, this was a game I've had my eye on for a while, like even before the Kickstarter campaign that they went through before Playtonic Friends took over the publishing duties. It's like a 2D, 3D mix racing game in the vein of like classic superscalar arcade games, like a lot of the ones Sega put out in the 90s.
Yeah.
But I am a sucker for anything with like cute little cars, and also a sucker for sort of retro with an X visual stylings. So I'm very excited for it. I gotta say, there's a lot of good visual diversity with everything Playtonic Friends is publishing.
Yeah, they're not limiting themselves to, well, we're Playtonic and our brand is 90s rare, so we've got to like adhere to anything from that era. No, they're all over the place, which I kind of love, because, well, I'll get into that, when we're kind of wrapping up, but why Playtonic Friends is such a boon to a sheltered know-nothing like me. This is really going to be finally my education in a lot of genres and diversity in gaming, and really just an expansive view of indie gaming in general. So yeah, I'm really, really pushing for the Little Gator Game to have a ukulele character in it, because I want it to be DKU so badly, but I will check it out even if it isn't. So, that being said, maybe we should move on to the one Playtonic Friends game we know is DKU, and that's Demon Turf. So yeah, Demon Turf just came out early November. It just missed Halloween by that much.
That's quite a shame, because this would be a very good Halloween-y game.
Why must we only chase certain vibes because it is October, or, no, it's you can enjoy this whenever you want.
There's never been a better time to tell your friends to go to hell.
Demon Turf has been in development for 3 years now. Fabraz, is that how you pronounce it?
You're asking the wrong guy.
Fabraz.
I am very sorry. Fabraz? I don't know.
I'm terrible with pronunciation. Like, I'm terrible with names in general. I have to hear it first, and if I just see it in text, then I stumble over myself. But it's been in development.
I'm truly sorry. We're going to have nice things to say about the game, I swear.
Yes. This isn't going to be a scathing review, trust me. But it's been in development for 3 years. And then, I hadn't heard of it because I don't follow any non-DKU news. Occasionally I'll get things in my peripheral vision, but it's usually like, oh, Nintendo's doing this. Oh, this is coming to Xbox. And I know that because I'm watching this direct for Rare News, or not direct, but, whatever, Xbox showcase for Rare News, and I'm seeing other game news. But, I don't seek out any and all gaming news because I don't have the time. Running DK Vine, like, I have to stay focused on what we cover, which is the DKU and Rare and Playtonic.
Yeah, this game was on my radar before before the news broke that Playtonic was publishing it, but it happened to crossed my eyes that like, oh, this game has a really unique, strong like visual identity, but I don't envy the position a lot of indie studios find themselves in, where it is so difficult to, and such a crapshoot, whether your project gets eyes on it.
Yeah.
And isn't drowned out by the AAA noise, which, no disrespect to, plenty of very good AAA projects, but just like you're a team with like maybe 12 people or less.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a generous number. There's teams with way fewer.
Yeah.
It's kind of, you just have to kind of hope you luck out and get attention behind it. And this was one of the ones that caught my eye, and I was excited to see how it would turn out.
Yeah, and as far as I go, had no idea this existed until Playtonic Friends announced they were publishing it. So that was my introduction to it, and I was keeping an eye on it from that point on, and then of course they announced Yooka Laylee were in it, so I was like, okay, well DK Vine's going to be covering this. This is going to be like a full-fledged DKU game, like Playtonic tier DKU game, and so yeah, it was something like, I knew the plot was like, it starred a demon by the name of Beebs. Of course, a play on Beelzebub, and she was going to try to overthrow the quote unquote Demon King. So I knew like roughly what it was going to be about, but, got the game. I actually got it for both Xbox One and, Nintendo Switch, because I initially got it for Xbox One, and then I was like, I want to play this on the Switch so I could play it anywhere in the house, anywhere I am. So I went ahead and got it for the Switch too, because I'm just a completionist by nature anyway. So yeah, I loaded in, and it starts you kind of in media res. By like throwing you into the training sequence. There's no cutscene. There's no establishing story. You're just launched into the training sequence, which is, presented in the form of a nightmare Beebs is having. And so this is kind of like your Spiral Mountain, if you will, where you're going through the moves and learning them and getting the hang of what you will have to do for the game. And this was the most disorienting part for me, where I was like trying to get on the same like wavelength as the game. I was trying to vibe with it, and I think it was just a lot of sensory overload all at once, because I'm like, am I missing some context here? Like what is happening? And, what was really throwing me too was the art style of the game is beautiful, but it really commits to the fact that it takes place in hell, because it like the training sequence, which is just like drowned out in purple, right? So I was just like, oh my God, it's like so purple, and what's happening, and oh my God. So I was trying to like get comfortable with it, and which I did, but the training sequence was like the most tumultuous point for me, where I was like, do I like this or not? I don't know. But visually, I mean, the game is stunning. And like, I don't know if I've seen an art style like this in a 3D platformer before.
Yeah, the closest thing I could think of would be, I've mentioned it before, the like high profile fan game, Sonic Roboblast 2, which is a Sonic game built over the course of several decades on the Doom engine. So it's similarly, yeah, I know it sounds absurd, but it works somehow. But it has a similar 2D character on a 3D plane system.
Mm-hmm.
And having not played that game in a while, and seeing a lot of the, like, I was really impressed and like really digging the art style of this game when I saw like the early trailers for it. Like it gave me a like big Paper Mario vibes.
Yeah, same.
In particular, but I did have this concern in the back of my mind. Oh, this looks like it wants me to do a lot of like high speed precision platforming, and my character is a cardboard cutout in a 3D world. Am I going to have problems perceiving depth and like constantly screw up because I can't discern where my character is in this world? And I'm thankful to report that has not been the case. I mean, for one, there's a very helpful shadow under Beebs at all times whenever she's in the air, so you never have any doubts about where you're going to land.
Yeah.
But it all feels a lot more natural than I was worried it wouldn't. And I'm very pleased with the general feel of it.
Yeah, watching the trailers, I was a bit unsure myself, like how it would feel actually controlling it. But it works. I mean, it's not an issue at all. It's odd. It's, you know, because up until you get your hands on the controls, you're like, I don't know. But then once you actually try it, it's just, it's so intuitive. Like, I don't even know if I would have needed the training sequence. I mean, it helps, and I probably did need it. But if you are a fan of 3D platformers, and you're going to feel right at home. It's very intuitive and, surprisingly simple considering how much you can actually do with Beebs. And the art style, I think, really helps add to the surreal, disorienting nature of the quote unquote demon turf, this hell-like realm it takes place in, because it never feels like it's part of our reality. It's like it's on this other dimensional plane where perspective and physics are slightly askew, and it's just surprisingly well thought out as kind of just this visual shorthand to express that, and it doesn't hinder gameplay at all.
Yeah, the entire game so far has felt like very ethereal, and I do appreciate that there was a tutorial level, because I do think that the control scheme is like very easy to grasp once you get a handle on it, but there are some unorthodox functions to say, like you have a lot of mobility in Beebs' jump options, but it takes a while to acclimate yourself to the order in which you need to do things to have her move a certain way. And I liked having a like sandbox to play around with that in before getting into the levels proper.
Oh, for sure. Like any like weirdness that I felt with the training sequence went away once I actually got into the game proper. And then in retrospect, I was like, okay, the training sequence, I'm glad it was there. So basically what I'm saying is, if you load up the game and you're not feeling it during the training sequence, just stick with it until you get past it, because then everything kind of falls into place after that. And it is, I think, a very helpful, albeit sort of long, sequence. I mean, yeah, you can speed run it, but you know me, DK, if I'm done slow, taking my time. And you know, I commented on like the extreme purple in both the training sequence and I guess the hub world. And I know you have some thoughts on the game's lighting in general.
Yeah, so this was one of my the few difficulties I had with the game, and fortunately it's one that it seems to realize itself is so this game, as you said, is very committed to its color scheme and its mood. So that means a lot of dark purple, a lot of red, a lot of orange. And at least for me, with my display devices and my not entirely perfect eyes, there were a lot of instances where I felt like the screen was a bit too dark or too extreme to feel like I could properly tell what was going on without straining my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
But as I said, the game seems to have realized this, and there is a gamma slider in the options that will lighten the game pretty considerably, and in a way that I don't think compromises the vision of the game. Like, this doesn't feel like the result isn't like Donkey Kong Country 2 on GBA. It doesn't completely destroy any artistic integrity of the game. It literally did just make it easier to see, and I appreciate that that option is there.
Yeah.
And I have noticed that there is going to be an upcoming patch to the game that will alleviate some of the more eye-fatiguing stages to look at, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, the game does offer options for, like, for example, if you're colorblind, like our friend Gibbon is. So, you know, there are, like, go into that option menu if it's a bit too much for you. I'd
play with the gamma setting about halfway up, personally.
Yeah. And I didn't touch it at all because I am a Virtual Boy fan, and I would be a hypocrite if I had an issue with this and I didn't have an issue with the Virtual Boy. I did have to take breaks.
Hyle says it's not red enough.
No, I had to take breaks. One of the reasons I jumped over to the Switch from the Xbox One was I was straining my eyes, and I was like, automatic pause. I have to go back to the Virtual Boy to show me the way to how to do this. And then I realized it would be easier to play on a Switch because I could constantly like look away from it and not just like be consumed by my television monitor. So if I played in handheld mode on the Switch, it was a lot more bearable and I could play for a longer duration of time without causing that fatigue. But you know, I'm glad that it committed to the lighting. I adore actually that it's stuck to the extreme lighting because, you know, it takes place in this like hell dimension, and you know, you get different colors as you go into different worlds. Like it's not just the same monotonous shade of purple that you're wondering if it's going to be, but it does remind me, like I've had a dream before, and I don't know if this is a common dream or if this is just a weird Hyle dream where I was in hell, but it wasn't like the Judeo-Christian hell with the flames and the, you know, like in a cavern, like what's so often depicted in things like Dante. It was just like a slightly purple world, like the sky was purplish red. And it was just kind of disorienting. I remember I was like in this forest in hell, and I was like trying to find my way through it, and I came upon this cabin, and this friendly demon was inside and offered me shelter. And this was a reoccurring dream I had a lot in my early 20s. I don't know what it signifies. I will let all of you armchair Freudians out there try to piece that together, but this really reminds me of that reoccurring dream I have, like this vision of hell.
Yeah, I was gonna say the demons in cabins, and especially, is very striking when you consider what's in this game.
So, like, once I got to the hub world, I was like, oh my god, this is exactly like that weird reoccurring dream I kept having, which I think sold me immediately. Like if in my opinion, if there is a dimension that is similar to our classical depictions of hell, it would probably look like this. And so that I'm glad it's part of our shared universe construct, because that slots in nicely with my own apparent brainwaves. So that's cool.
As I got a bit further in the game, like I didn't get too terribly far. I got like up through the first phase of the second world, but I did appreciate that there are levels that don't look as extreme as others, but they never look normal. Yeah, everything, like you said, it's committed to the bit.
Yeah, you always feel like you're not on Earth. Like it feels disorienting, but only slightly disorienting. Like you can still like feel like it's a tangible place. It's not so extreme, but you know, the game's humor, the tone of it, and just the overall presentation, like I said, really started clicking for me once I got into Forktown, which is the main hub world of the game, where you access all the other worlds and where like the centralized action takes place. And that's where I like realized this game kind of reminds me a bit of one of like like a more off-kilter manga series or anime. Like it kind of has that same sensibilities. Like you're in this hell-like realm and it stars a demon. And I didn't understand the character of Beebs that much in the training sequence, because the training sequence takes place. It's her dream. It's her nightmare. And she has this antagonistic relationship with the Demon King, who is the ruler of the demon turf. And like, you don't understand the context of it. You don't understand like what this animosity is. And then you get to the hub world and you realize, oh, Beebs is just a bit of a sociopath who basically like wants to overthrow the king. And she's just this nobody who's like, yeah, I'm going to commit a coup d'etat in hell and become queen of the underworld.
Yeah, I don't have like the best read on Beebs totally yet, and I think I'm just content to like treat that as by design. Like I want to learn more about the context of all this as I go on. But I do love this impression I get that she is just kind of a shitty little kid. And it's sort of presenting this question of like, well, what if the shitty little kid who said all these things like could actually back them up?
Yeah, it became pretty hilarious. Like once I actually got things going, once the game got moving and I started talking to NPCs, and I realized that everyone in the game basically thinks she's unhinged and crazy, and like they don't take her seriously. She's just this bratty kid who's like, I'm gonna kill the king, and like that's it. That's it. But it works really well because of how incredulous everyone is towards her.
Yeah, and you even have this like contextual thing with your NPC interactions. Like you can tell some of them have been around Beebs for a while and they just know this is like her shtick. They're kind of laughing it off. Mm-hmm. And others just sort of treat her as like, oh, where'd this kid come from? I don't know you.
Yeah, and once you like understand that, it really like, I think Beebs, the best way to describe her is imagine all of the worst impulses of Kazooie and Laylee mashed together without the mitigating influence of Banjo or Yooka. So basically she is just this unhinged, bratty kid who happens to be a demon. And she's just let loose. And it works for the setting and the context of the game. I love Forktown as a locale, as a setting. Like that's really where I fell in love with this game because, you know, I'm somebody who really likes, you know, talking to NPCs, like exploring basically like the mundane aspects of a game world.
This is the kind of thing that I loved about Banjo-Tooie, where it's this fantastical world with really mundane things going on in it.
Yeah, and this is where it shares DNA with Playtonic proper. Like, I would say that the humor is a little bit different than you would find from Playtonic or Rare, but it kind of derives the same sense that there's this fantastical setting full of, you know, miraculous, extravagant, you know, ludicrous characters, but they deal with the same mundane trivialities of life that we do. And so that's the grounding element there. And so that's what makes it relatable and makes you think like, I could see myself living here, under the right circumstances. Like it makes sense to me. And so that is where I think it really does, like get on the same kind of wavelength as Playtonic, because I was getting a lot of that, and that's where like the game charmed the pants off of me. Not literally, I kept my pants on, but metaphorically, they were on the other side of the room at this point. So like just little details that are never really explained, or at least if there is an explanation, I haven't found it yet, because this is just our first impressions. Neither of us have gotten that far into the game. Like, I'm only into the first world. Cameron just started this, the second. But the fact that the currency in the Demon Turf is lollipops and cakes, or like sweets. This is what demons use to trade, like, and use as like a form of monetary good, is sugary treats. And I thought that was an interesting take. Like, it's not like skulls or, you know, like souls or anything like you would think it would be. It's candy. And like, I don't know if that's like commentary on gluttony, like one of the 7 deadly sins, or if it's just this notion that they stumbled upon, like, oh, that would be funny, and kind of like a contrast to the hell-like setting if they like lollipops. But it works.
I feel like there's a myriad of different ways I could take it, but I just like that it's something so innocuous. Yeah.
And like again, like I said, the training sequence kind of launches you in media res, like it just throws you into this world. And that's what I kind of like about Demon Turf, is that you're sort of left to kind of figure out and deduce things on your own. It's what made the original Star Wars work so well, like A New Hope as we know it now, where, you know, you're just kind of thrown into this galaxy and you kind of have to piece things together. Like, some things are explained to you, and then everything else you just kind of have to pick up along the way. And that's kind of a similar philosophy in Demon Turf, where, like, no, we're not going to explain to you why they use lollipops as money. Figure it out. It's just what they do. Like, well, does it make sense that we use paper and little metal slivers? That doesn't make any sense. So yeah, I liked it. And I liked that there are so many NPCs, Cameron. Oh my God. Like, you know me. Like, my biggest thing is character. I love characters. DK Vine is founded on characters. This notion of a shared universe is all about characters. And the more characters, the better. If you can have a character instead of just a rote, bland menu, I will take that any day of the week. And oh my God, there are so many characters in Demon Turf, so many NPCs you can meet, and so many shops you can visit. So yeah, I don't want to spoil all of the NPCs, because some of them are genuinely surprising, and I want people to have the same reactions we had when we first saw them. But I think we should talk about some of them, because there are supporting characters, both large and small.
Yeah, I think the two that the game is telegraphing to be like the most notable insofar as they show up all over the menus and the loading screen and the game's promotional art. Mm-hmm. Midgi, I'm not exactly 100% sure how that is supposed to be pronounced. Midgi.
Midgi or Midgi, but I probably Midgi.
And Lucy with an I.
Short for Lucifer, obviously.
Yeah, that one's a bit more obvious.
Yeah, like Beebs. I was trying to figure out what the shorthand for Midgi is, like if there is an old timey name for the devil. I'm just disappointed I haven't stumbled upon Lord Harry yet.
Yeah, it's a name I think I'm gonna have to sit with, and then if I figure it out, I'll be, oh, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, Midgi is like a kappa-like creature who walks around wearing a half barrel full of water.
Yes.
And he's a cute little guy, and he's sort of in story like Beeb's biggest like ally / cheerleader, and also the vector for a lot of the early games tutorializing. Mm-hmm. Like, he'll be the one to pull Beebs aside and say, hey, go get these batteries from behind these doors to get to the next area. Or very early on, there will be, I guess we didn't touch on this, there's a mechanic in the game where you essentially set your own checkpoints throughout a level, but you have a limited number of uses, so it's up to you to kind of suss out the pace of the level for yourself and figure out for yourself, weigh the options, which parts you would rather not have to redo versus risking running out of checkpoints very late in the level.
I was terrible at pacing myself.
I was too.
Good.
Especially because early on I thought maybe like you could remove ones you would put down earlier, but that's not the case.
Yeah.
You have to commit to the decisions you've made.
Yeah.
But very early on in the game, there will be spots that have like a big target marking them, and a note from Midgey saying like, "Hey, Beebs, this would be a good place to put a checkpoint."
Yeah, and Lucy is just like a straight up demon, like Beebs. You said in the notes something is going on with her, and I got the same vibe too. I don't know if we're just reading into things or...
Yeah, I feel like, as I said before with Beebs, like I feel like the game is intentionally keeping me in the dark with some stuff to pay off later, or maybe I'm just not supposed to know. I feel like Lucy... Like, there's ambiguity with Lucy, and I think it's like setting something up for later, because you're kind of seeing this evolving relationship with how she treats Beebs through the game. And I have to think there's something deeper going on. She's kind of treating like Beebs a bit like a dismissive schoolyard bully a little bit early on. And then I think like some cracks are starting to show with a little bit of progress in that. Like again, not spoiling too much. The beginning of the game, the kind of vibe you get with Lucy is she is like talking down to Beebs, like doesn't really seem to think she can do what she's saying.
Yeah.
And just kind of smugly like, yeah, sure, whatever you say, Beebs, run along.
Yeah, ostensibly she's presented like Midgey as Beebs' like only friends, really. But yeah, I'm kind of distrustful of her at this point in the game. Maybe I'm wrong. But the world building is vast. The cast is vast. Because, Forktown is like your centralized hub, and you've got different layers, different levels of Forktown. Like there's the populous, kind of town square, and then you get like deeper into like the fog strewn like lower levels, where like some shadier activity is happening. And then there's the Demon the Demon King's castle above, like just beyond where the portals to all the different worlds are.
Yeah, Forktown does feel like it's an actual town.
Yeah. And
there's also a clear demarcation between it's very populous, and it's kind of split between... Like I'd say you can tell which characters are important and which aren't most of the time, because there's the general citizens who are just sort of regular demon folk, like the classical, like red guy with pointy horns. And then there's more diverse creatures among like the important NPCs, and some of them are also regular, red people with horns, but
yeah. So that
you start to see it bleed out a little bit.
That's what I really liked. That Forktown feels like an actual location. It's not just a bunch of shops strewn together, but like there's actually thought with how it's laid out, and there's also like elements of like class, and like you get the sense that like, oh, these are the more the poorer areas of Forktown, and then these are the more wealthy, and this is where all the commerce happens. And then over here we've got the farm, and it's just so much fun to explore. Like, Cameron, I have to be honest, I spent most of my playtime so far just in Forktown, like just running around visiting all the shops, and I didn't even like really want to move on. Like, eventually you have to, because you're like, I don't have enough skill to do some of these challenges that Forktown provides you. Like I need to actually like play the game, but I love when you can just get lost in an overworld. And not in the aggravating sense of how I play Pokemon, where I'm just going around in the grass of Pallet Town, but actually like stuff to do and people to talk to. It's so much fun. And yeah, you mentioned that there are more than just demon folk. There's a human character who is posing as a demon. And it's not explained at this.
I love this NPC. It's just sort of it's clearly a human in a demon costume. Beeb sees right through her disguise, but is just sort of humoring her.
Yeah. It reminds me of the characters from Viva Pinata, the human characters of Viva Pinata, where they're
she is a lot like a Viva Pinata character.
Yeah, it's just this like enclave of weirdos on Pinata Island who like, we're just going to adapt to this lifestyle, and like what is this human doing in the demon turf? What is this human doing in this realm? We don't know, but she's disguised as a demon to fit in. It's great. But then you've also got sort of like classical monsters. I mean, you mentioned Midgi, who's kind of like a kappa from Japanese folklore, but you've got a mummy. Newbie is the character. Well, there's also another mummy running around the town too. But Newbie is one of the shopkeepers. And then you've got...
I have to imagine that's a play on Anubis.
Yes. And then you've got the dude who runs the arcade, who may in fact be Vlad the Impaler, aka Dracula, because his name is Vlad and he's clearly a vampire. So I like that in this hell-like realm, which again, it doesn't like correspond necessarily to the Judeo-Christian depiction of hell that so many of us in the West are familiar with, but it kind of is like it's a realm where demons reside, not necessarily one where people are damned to. It's just it might be the basis of a lot of mythology. So the fact that maybe some historical creatures from folklore may find their way into this realm, I think adds a lot of texture to it, kind of enriches it a little bit. And the sheer amount of stuff you're given to do and collect in the game itself, like outside of the gameplay, outside of the worlds, it's staggering. I know I saw like in the pre-release press that Playtonic Friends and Fabraz was putting out, like they were really playing up like how much you had to do. It didn't really sink in until I actually started to do it. Like it beyond just like collectibles, the customizable options. You can customize Beeb's hair color, for example, or you can buy pets that just sit on her head. And you've got just this wide selection that you can buy with your lollipops or sweets.
It's a really good thing for a collectathon to land on, where you can just use the things that you've encountered in the level, not as currency to progress. I mean, there is that with the batteries, but that's a very binary, you finish the level, you get a battery.
Yeah.
But just having these extra optional items unlock just really cool little toys to play with for your character is really nice and cool to see. Even if I don't think I'll use certain ones, it's nice that the options are there and for people to kind of decide for themselves what most appeals to them.
Yeah, because, this is a game where you do have this established protagonist character. It's not like, a game where you're basically creating your own player insert. The closest thing we have to that, as far as DK Vine goes, is Sea of Thieves, where, you create your pirate, you customize your pirate. You add whatever you want to this character. But it's a nice middle ground, honestly. Like, to be able to like say, no, I want to change Beebs in this slight way. And you also can like augment her moveset, give her more skills. There's that level of progression you can do. Which is like similar to, like, your Cheetos or your Vendy tonics.
Pretty much as soon as I had enough currency to do both of them, like what I did indulge in like the dyes and like the ability modifiers, and the ones I went with in my like loadout so far, I bought, like dye for Beeb's hair that is basically just like a more saturated version of what her colors are already, just to make her a little bit more vibrant on screen.
Yeah.
Or like I bought like a blue outfit to see like how it changes the character, and like you'll see like this. For one thing, it's neat that like I wasn't sure if the game would do this or not, but it does affect the color palette of Beeb's like sprite everywhere in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like on the loading screens, on the results screens, like if you could put Beebs in like a black hair and a red outfit, and it'll be that way in the UI.
That's really cool. Like, I wouldn't expect the UI to change. Like, at bare minimum, I would expect the little dialogue representations to change, but that's really cool that it just completely like overwrites it.
Yeah, and I also bought some abilities that I don't feel like really like mitigate the game's difficulty, but give Beebs more maneuverability options or help her move quicker. Like, I think my loadout right now is I've got an item that helps her run faster, and an item that like adds a slight bit of vertical momentum to her spin jump. Mm-hmm. And one other item that I can't quite remember off the top of my head, but it was definitely just trying to up her movement options and speed a little bit. And I feel like that's been just enough for me. And the game does so that you can't just have like a God mode Beebs. You are constrained to a number of equipment slots. Like I think the set of options I have equipped on her now is full. Like I can't add like currently I can't add another ability to her that gives her an extra checkpoint or puts a shield around her.
Yeah.
I would have to delete some of the ones I have.
Yeah. So they keep it balanced. My biggest struggle is choosing which pet to buy. I have not chosen yet. I probably am going to buy them all, but which one will I have on her head? I don't know. It's a tough choice. And
one of them makes a reference.
Yes. And maybe we won't exactly say what it is.
I'm not going to say what it is, but it's one I didn't expect.
It's a DKU reference. Let's just say that. And not one you would expect. So I'll just say that much. The photo taking, which is a part of the game, like from the outset, like you can take in-game photos. And then there's different things you could do, like you can take selfies. There is actually a kind of quest attached to photo taking that kind of becomes like Pokemon Snap, where you have to like find the pictures to take, and it becomes like this scavenger hunt sort of in each area.
I think it's similar to the like photo taking quest in Wind Waker.
Oh, okay.
And like even a similar setup. I like the conceit of it being that there's a like photo shop that was set up, not realizing that, demons don't want to take photos.
Right. Well, considering this is the human character posing as a demon, that makes
Right.
that makes sense. But yeah, you have to like take the pictures. But the really cool thing is then it's in this gallery that you can then visit in the overworld, and it's just this expansive place that feels like a real place. And you go around, and like your pictures are then like in these frames on the wall,
and they will be the specific pictures you took.
Yeah.
It won't be just a generic,
and
like achievement image.
so I have to admit, I was hooked on this. Once I like visited this gallery and I got the gist of this, I wasted way too much time in my valuable first impressions playing sessions, like trying to get my talking points for this episode. Instead, I just got hung up on this photo taking, and I spent hours just messing with this. It's a lot of fun, and it really like encourages exploration and doing the kind of stuff I already do anyway. Just with the added touch of then getting a picture of it. So I'm a big fan of that.
It's also just nice to have a very different kind of side quest for the type of 3D platformer this is, and the type of 3D platformer this is actually very different than we're used to seeing in DKU games, because it's set up like a 2D platformer.
Yeah.
It's a linear beginning, not linear in terms of level design, like it's not a straight line, but linear in terms of progression. You start at point A, you try to get to point B, and you can choose to pick up certain things along the way in pursuit of that point B.
Yeah, a few times I was thinking, you know what? Like, if there was a 3D Donkey Kong game that was kind of modeled after this structure, I would be okay with that. Like, that, I would kind of love that. This game just felt so refreshing in so many places. I've never played anything quite like it. Like I said, if you're a fan of 3D platforming, you will be able to pick this up and feel, right at home. But it doesn't feel like anything I've really played. It's not like, oh, this is very similar to Banjo-Kazooie or like this reminds me of a 3D Mario game. Yeah, there are bits and pieces here or there where you'll get that.
There are a lot of like places like superficially where I can tell like something was a point of influence.
Yeah.
Like the level gates that you enter to get the specific areas are very Spyro-y. The art style is very Paper Mario. The dialogue is very Banjo.
But, when you pull it all together in this new package, it doesn't feel like this hodgepodge mosaic. It feels like its own identity. And, I was impressed. We should probably touch upon Yooka Laylee's cameo, because it's the whole reason why this is quote unquote DKU. Why we classify this as a, part of the same shared universe as Donkey Kong Country.
I don't know how much I want to speak on it, just because I think it is... They did the cameos in this game in a really nice way, where I feel like they're thoughtfully placed, in that they seemed, of the ones I've encountered so far, they seem to come in like one of two flavors, or a little bit of both, where if they're out in the open in a very obvious spot where you can encounter them, it'll be a place that makes sense for them to be contextually. Mm-hmm. Like, I'll use the example, the characters from Social Monsters are probably the earliest characters you'll encounter. Slimantha and Vanity, and the reason that you encounter them in the middle of Forktown is because they're taking selfies in front of the photo studio.
If you don't know who those characters are, or raise his hand, it never feels obtrusive. Like, you don't think, oh, this is awkward. Like, well, what is this? What is this ripping me out of this? Like, they feel like they're just part of the game, like part of the fabric of it.
Right. And the other flavor is the character, like the guest character, will be in an out-of-the-way place where you feel like you've discovered, you've like bumped into something special for having run into them.
Yeah.
Going off the beaten path.
And that's what Yooka Laylee are.
Yeah. I had to, in advance of recording this, I had to get a small hint of like just like the general area to look in, because I didn't know, if this is a first impression episode, I didn't want to, search and search and search only to learn, oh, they're in the very last level of the game. They're not. I was able to find them, but even given the like general location, I still had to search pretty darn hard for them. And it was satisfying to finally run into them.
Yeah, it's a satisfying appearance. And, it's just a treat to have them there and to establish that this takes place in the same world as you. Well, I mean, another dimension, but in the multiversal construct of Yooka Laylee. It's like, this is a hell realm that presumably, if you find the way into it, any character could visit. So I think Yooka Laylee's appearance, it definitely feels like that's authentically Playtonic, because there's a lot of fourth wall breaking, and it becomes more meta in the same style of humor of Playtonic and Rare than what Demon Turf usually trades in. So it does Yooka Laylee justice, and it's out of the way enough where it doesn't feel like it just pulls you out of Demon Turf.
Yeah, and it's a nice bonus with all of these characters that you get to see how Beeb's personality bounces off of them.
Yeah.
Specifically.
Yeah. Once I got a feel for Beebs, I was interested how she would actually engage with Laylee, of all people. But yeah, it's I think it's worth it if you're a Yooka Laylee fan to just see it play. I don't want to spoil it for you. I mean, you've probably been spoiled a little bit by how it plays out, because some of it was in the trailer announcing they were in it, but
The only other thing I'll say is when you find them, just look around the environment they're in. There's some fun stuff there too.
Well, let's give our final thoughts on Demon Turf for now, because I feel like this is a game we're going to come back to eventually on the conversation. But that's surprising in and of itself, because Demon Turf is a game I would have probably never played if it weren't published by Playtonic Friends. And that sounds like it's an indictment against Demon Turf, which it is absolutely not. Let me explain. It's a realization what a gift that the Playtonic Friends publishing label, the initiative behind it, really is. For me, and me in particular, because I am someone who can't afford the time or resources to play anything really outside of the DKU or Rare or Playtonic, at least not for an extended time. So, Playtonic Friends is going to get me to try out and sample and get outside of my comfort zone just a wide array of indie titles that I wouldn't have otherwise tried out. And if Demon Turf is any indication of, I'm probably going to end up loving. And as far as Demon Turf itself, it punches so far above its weight. And I said the same thing about Yooka Laylee, but I think it's doubly true for Demon Turf, because Demon Turf had even less resources than Yooka Laylee did in development. And, it's a super indie 3D platformer. And, with that, sure, it has some slight drawbacks and slight imperfections. But when you put in perspective that it's not a AAA title, I think that just adds to its charm and its, can-do attitude. As I get older, I said I'm getting far less cynical, but I am cynical towards things like the AAA games industry, like that side of the industry, like your annual Call of Duties and what have you. Just the churning big budget titles that, I don't know. I never had much interest in to begin with, but I really think that the true heart of the games industry right now is the indie side of it. And it's sort of amazing that we're at this place where Playtonic is evolving into a super indie that can give these smaller indies a leg up and a spotlight that they wouldn't otherwise have. And, like I said, like Demon Turf would have never been on my radar had it not been for Playtonic, and now it is, and now I'm playing it, and now I'm loving it, and now I'm thinking, like, what else am I missing out there? Which I know, like, everybody who knows me is screaming at me, you're missing quite a bit, Hyle. We've been telling you need to play this game. We've been telling you need to play this game. We've been saying you would love this for years. I know, but this at least gives me a slight opportunity to expand my horizons, which is great.
Yeah, I am really glad to have spent time with this game. It is something you have to go into with a different mindset than pretty much every game in the DKU. Like, it is Like, you do have to keep in mind this is a very, like, small indie title. It's got some, like, it's got some rough edges, but I don't feel like that's necessarily a bad thing. It's just indicative of the place it's coming from.
Yeah.
And it kind of gives the whole thing a very, like, charming handmade quality to it.
Yeah. Like I said, it doesn't detract from it. Like, it's just, like, I am suitably impressed with what it does.
I would even go as far as to say, like, some of the, I think, misplaced expectations with the first Yooka Laylee were because in screenshots it looked like a AAA game with, like, a massive, ridiculous budget, and in practice it's would fall short here and there in places where you could reminded this is an indie game working under indie game constraints. Demon Turf wears what it is on its sleeve to its betterment.
Yeah, that does help keep expectations in check. When you have, no expectations going into it, you only have up to go. Ironic for a game that takes place in hell. But, for fans of the DKU, we've been saying, well, it's unlike anything in the DKU, so keep that in mind. But I think you'll appreciate the world building and characters and humor. If you have followed me for all of these years, you know what I like. You know what I get into. And, if you're similar in any regard, it really is like Beebs herself. Like, she took a while for her to grow on me, but once I realized that she's pure chaos, like personified into this character, then I started like clicking with everything. The humor and presentation, they're a bit different, but I think that you'll find it endearing all the same. And the game itself, I've been talking a lot about like the personality behind it, but the game itself plays great. And that, given the sheer amount of moves and the art style, I wouldn't have imagined it to be this intuitive. And like, just doing things like wall jumping in this game, like you do in Super Mario 64, that's the game I associate most with wall jumping. But it feels so tight. Like an indie game, I wouldn't expect to feel this tight and crunchy and satisfying to pull off all the moves. And it's satisfying in the same way that like Yooka Laylee is satisfying. Like I've been saying, wow, Yooka Laylee plays so much better than the original Banjo-Kazooie when you go back to that. And it just kind of amazing how great it feels to control the characters. It feels great to control Beebs too, and I don't know how you pull that off considering she's a 2D character in a 3D world.
Yeah, I get a lot of like Mario 64 acrobatics vibes from this game, and it's kind of a neat situation we find ourselves in, because I think among games in the DKU, if you look at just the basic facts of like, this is one of the most divorced titles in terms of like, it's a development team that's never made a DKU game before. There's an IP that's it's not Donkey Kong or a Rare IP or a Playtonic IP in the same vein as one of their pre-existing IPs, but it's still finding so much of that common ground.
Yeah.
Because you can tell the influence is there, the shared love of a certain type of game and creative sensibility is evident there. And so I think there's a lot in it to enjoy if you enjoy those types of games.
Yeah, it kind of like makes me think like what would happen if, for example, like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the MCU, what if they started like outsourcing other studios to make movies that they would then publish as part of the MCU? That's kind of what Demon Turf feels like. Like, it feels like completely different than anything we've gotten before, but also this beautiful companion piece that works all the same. And look, the price is right. It's $24.99 across the various platforms. To get it digitally, at least. They are releasing a physical edition, at least on Xbox, which is also $24.99. I just looked up. So hey, the price is right for this. I mean, it is an indie title, but I know a lot of people have been complaining, especially when it comes to Nintendo fandom, how damn expensive games are and how the price is inflexible most of the time. And, you know, $24.99 for a solid little 3D platformer that gives you just hours and hours and hours of stuff to do, especially if you're a completionist. If you're a completionist, you will probably be sinking. I'm not one to say how much time you will spend with the game, because you know how much time I spend with games. I overdo it. But, you know, I will definitely know I will be putting in over 100 hours into this game when it's all said and done. So $24.99 for that much enjoyment, for that much content, that's a steal. And, you know, it excites me what's to come with Playtonic Friends, because, you know, this is just the beginning. Like, and then if we're going to get to the point where Playtonic is releasing one of their own games every year, and then we have a whole handful of Playtonic Friends games that also may play into this shared universe construct. I mean, that's just like such a wide diversity of games and titles that we have to look forward to. Oh, Dustin is in the chat. Hold on. Dustin says, I really like the flat look of the characters. They put a lot of thought into making them really work with the setting. Like, it's not like Paper Mario where they're supposed to be flat. They feel like they're really there in that setting.
Yeah, there's no like people turn around and they actually like flip like cardboard. They actually animate. Like, Beebs has like full 8-direction frames animated, and there's even the neat touch where like the bandage on her face, the asymmetry is reflected in all the sprites. It doesn't just flip like an old fighting game character, and I really appreciate that detail.
Yeah, and did they ever explain what the bandage is from?
No, I think it's just a like rough and tumble little kid like character design detail.
Yeah, she just gets into fights because she's, again, I said a sociopath. Maybe that's overselling it, but she definitely seems unhinged a little bit, even for a demon, because some of these demons seem pretty gentle folk.
I would recommend Demon Turf if you like kind of games that have been the DKU so far. It's a very interesting 3D platformer that I don't think you really see a lot of games of its type. Yeah, it's the best time you'll ever have in hell.
This has been a File 2 production.
¡Qué rico!